regular weekly tutorials. So today's tutorial, it's not really a tutorial, it's the Emily, the Supercharged Book Club with me, Emily McHugh, and I'm featuring like every few weeks a different book that I'm reading or some insights from a book. And so yesterday I found myself at Barnes & Noble here in the US and went in there for one particular book. I went in there to get this book called Limitless by Jim Quick, and I will definitely be sharing more about this book, but not tonight, because even though this was my goal to go and get this book, which I did, I ended up getting a whole bunch of other books. I ended up also getting this platinum edition of The Richest Man in Babylon, which is a book I've read a long time ago. It's a classic entrepreneurship book, The Fable. If you haven't read this book, definitely do. We'll talk about this another night as well, but I thought I'd pick up the hard copy of it since I had it on the digital file. But then the book I really want to talk to you tonight about is the Steve Jobs book. Oh my Lord. This is a book I've been wanting to read for a while and finally got it. This is the 10th anniversary edition. I can't believe it's been that long. And I picked it up, and it's a thick old book, as you can see, by Walter Isaacson. And this book, almost 600 pages, I have read almost 23% of the book in less than 24 hours. It is that much of a page turner. It is that fascinating, that interesting. I mean, it's, as they say, truth is weirder than fiction. Well, here is the truth, and it's very intriguing. So I want to share a little bit about this book and what it teaches us about confidence, and especially as we're celebrating International Women's Day, what does Steve Jobs have to teach women about confidence? So I'm going to come back and share some of those insights. Again, I'm only 23% through the book. I'm sure I will have another segment where I'll go into more details on different aspects of a book like this, because it covers so much ground, so many lessons. Another book I picked up was the Emily Dickinson Selected Poems of Emily Dickinson, who, by the way, I was named after. That's have you know as a little trivia tip. But as I was perusing this book, and I am very much one that I love judging books by their covers, and I buy them as a result of that. That is one of the motivating factors to get a book for me, if it's beautifully put together. And a book of poetry in this format is just beautiful to have, and it's a great reference. So as I was perusing this book, I came across a poem from Emily Dickinson that ties in perfectly with the Steve Jobs highlights I want to share tonight. So, or today, whichever time zone you're going to watch this in. So it says here, each life converges to some center expressed or still. Exists in every human nature a goal. Admitted scarcely to itself, it may be too fair for credibility's temerity, to dare. Okay, I think I'm reading it in a cadence that may not match what she wrote, but I'm going to say it again and hopefully it will fit. Each life converges to some center expressed or still. Exists in every human nature a goal. Admitted scarcely to itself, it may be too fair for credibility's temerity, to dare. And as I read that, I thought immediately of Steve Jobs. He did not have the problem of daring. He did not have the problem of setting a goal that would intimidate most mere mortals. And he would go for it with everything that he had, and no temerity in his pursuit. So as I read the book here, Steve Jobs, one of the phrases from the book is that he was calmly confident. Now, he was not a calm person by any means, but about his confidence he was. And he would dare to do things that no one else would dare to do. One example is he showed up at one point when he was looking for a job early in his young days, when he'd finished high school and he had dropped out of college and he needed a job. He went into Atari, remember video gaming? Well, it wasn't quite video gaming, but games of sorts. Yeah, I guess it was video games. Early days of video games, Atari. And he walked into the lobby and he said, I'm not going to leave until I get a job. He came in there barefoot, kept, unbathed, unhair combed, etc. So you can imagine the sight. And so the receptionist pretty much said to call the CEO and said, what do you want me to do? You want me to call the cops or do you want to see him? Well, suffice it to say, he left there with a job. He was hired. And that type of situation happened to him throughout his whole life. And he just dared to do things. When he was a young fellow interested in computers and electronics, he found in the phone book the number of Mr. Packard of Hewlett Packard, called him up and asked him for parts that he needed for a project. He ended the call by getting a summer internship at Hewlett Packard, and because he dared to ask. So what we have to learn from him today is that there was nothing he was afraid to ask, that his level of confidence was such that he would find a way to get what he needed. Now, unfortunately, he also had a reputation of being manipulative and squishing a lot of toes to achieve his goals. And by no means do I suggest we emulate those tendencies. However, I want to focus on just the concept of confidence, which for some people may border on arrogance, especially in the case of someone like him. So what is the difference between confidence and arrogance? And they can almost be one and the same thing, for the exception of a few key points. One of them being that when you're confident, you do believe in yourself, you do trust yourself, and you know that you have this value to offer. And last week I went through the 3 simple steps, which I encourage you to go back and watch how to boost your confidence in 3 simple steps. The arrogance is when you really dismiss others as meaning that what you believe in yourself, no one can really tell you anything differently, that you're not really open to learning too much from other people in a way, that your word is gospel and so forth. So when you pass into that realm where you cannot be taught per se, or you're not open to another perspective, that becomes arrogant and it becomes dangerous. But that is not what the focus is here. It's about what it takes to just have that kind of confidence. And I believe for women to be able to harness the power of confidence at that level is extremely valuable and extremely important. And as I read this book, Steve Jobs, there's a lot of people in here that I actually either met or knew personally. Steve Jobs, I didn't meet him directly, but I have seen him in person, and I have engaged with people who definitely worked with him, because with my company, Kasori, we sold to Apple our stylish laptop box for almost 10 years. And I would go to Cupertino like once or twice a year and all of that. And so I was intimately connected with people at Apple and really understood the culture and the legends of Steve Jobs while he was still there. And kind of looking back, I wish I'd had more confidence to have approached him directly. I actually didn't mail him something. I didn't get a response to my mail, but to be more adamant, be more insistent, be more persistent. I did meet Michael Dell once, and I did speak to him, and I actually also met what's his name, Bill Gates, and I asked him for $1 million. He didn't give it to me, but anyhow, I digress. The point is, you have to be bold and you have to stand up. All right, so here's another thing. Steve Jobs admired people who stood up for what they believed and stood up to him. Okay, he had to stand up to him and was willing to push back against maybe his abrasiveness to you and not crumble under that. And many times in life, when we get resistance and that pushback, we tend to recede, or we just kind of go into a shell, when that is the very time when you're to burst forth farther. And that's one big lesson to learn from him. He also had great expectations of himself and of others, and encouraging people, forcing people to do more than they thought was possible. And it says here, by expecting them to do great things, you can get them to do great things. If you expect someone to do something great, they will do something great. So just having the confidence in others that they're capable of doing more and not being limited to what they think they can actually do because of obstacles that may come up. it's interesting to also note that it is important to know that you can be honest with yourself without being embarrassed. And I feel like embarrassment, the fear of embarrassment, is one of the biggest reasons that a lot of people lose confidence or lose nerve. You know, what are other people going to say? What are other people going to think? And that's one thing when it came to Steve Jobs, that was not even on his mind. It was never on his mind what other people were thinking. And granted, to a fault where it became a problem, because you can't just live your life not caring about what anyone thinks. But when it came to making certain decisions about things that needed to be done or his vision for the company, he truly was true to the confidence that he had. And most people don't have that level of self-assuredness and are not able to dare to do the things that he did. Let me see what else can I share with you about this, because if you've read this book, you really tell me what you think about it. But I have, as I said, I've just been reading it since yesterday, and I have tabs all over this book. Every page is like a tab, and so when I read my books, I write notes all through it. I even have a separate notebook just for writing the notes from my book. And I was thinking of writing my notes in Notion, which I probably will, but it was just easier for me to write it by pencil and paper. And then I'll write the page numbers, and then I'll write my notes. So that's kind of how I like to do it. But my major takeaway that I want to just encourage you with this, definitely, this is a book to read for all entrepreneurs. There are no end of entrepreneurial lessons, human flaws, weaknesses, strengths, you name it. So many things to learn about what it takes to start a business and believe in yourself, despite what other people may think, or judging that book by its cover, which in the case of Jobs was not a good idea, because what you saw was generally not what he was about, especially when he first started. How he looked, how he dressed, his notorious not bathing and all that kind of stuff, you know, and if people were put off by those things initially, they would miss the genius behind it all. So I just want to encourage you to stand up for what you believe, be confident enough about yourself and the value that you offer to continually show up, even when you may not feel like it, even when your hair might not be in place. You know, that is one of the big reasons a lot of people don't show up, is because the hair isn't done, or their makeup isn't done, or some other frivolous nonsense. Steve Jobs did not allow his hair not being done prevent him to show up in that lobby asking for a job. Now, I do not recommend that we do that at all. However, he did it, and he did it on many occasions, walking barefoot around San Francisco, presenting himself in front of retailers to get sales, which he did. He mesmerized people, he captivated them, and he was able to transcend just how he appeared, what he was able to share. So if you can have confidence in that kind of decrepit state, imagine if you are well put together and if you are presentable, how much more impact you can have. That's again that's my humble opinion. That's my humble opinion. So as I said, I will share again about other insights from this book, but today I wanted to at least come on and share this one about the confidence perspective. And if you want to read about someone who exuded confidence, this is the book to read on that topic. Absolutely, you will certainly learn a lot about the subject. And the author, Walter Isaacson, did an absolutely brilliant job in writing this book and keeping track of all the huge cast of characters that are laid out in here, and chronicling the impact, which is Steve Jobs and what he did for computing, and far beyond that, even to storytelling, which again, that's a whole other topic. Again, I'm just going to focus on confidence, because you can go on many tangents in many directions when you're talking about a book like this. But tonight, that is the focus that I want to have. And I want to leave you again with the quote from Emily Dickinson's book of poetry here, the compilation, the exclusive Barnes and Noble compilation, which says, each life converges to some center expressed or still. Exists in every human nature a goal, admitted scarcely to itself, it may be too fair for credibility's temerity to dare. So dare, my people, dare. And in this day of celebrating women and our accomplishments, keep daring, keep being confident, and as always, stay supercharged. See you next time, and thank you for joining.